Good evening. I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. Thank you for joining us. And those of you who are joining us for the first time, a very special thank you. I was playing some songs, the music of Third World, and I'm doing this in tribute to Bunny Ruggs, Third World lead singer who died recently. I felt compelled to do this because I grew up listening to Third World. Many of my friends, we danced and, vibed on the music of Third World. And so I believe that we've lost another light. But as I said the other day in tribute to Nelson Mandela, that I start to believe in reincarnation for this, maybe for a selfish reason, that I hope that when these lights go, they come back to us, and so that the world can benefit from more eras of such wonderful, wonderful human beings. And so my deepest condolences to the family and friends and the fans of Bunny Ruggs, also known as William Clark. I will play some of Third World music tonight during our breaks. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, allow me a moment to introduce you to CWS. Here we have conversations with people about their journeys. How are they using their gifts and talents to help others? How are you using your gifts and talents to make a positive impact on humanity? With that, I am constantly looking for people who are doing extraordinary things or doing things extraordinarily well. My primary reason for this is so that us, the audience, can be informed and enlightened and encouraged, but most importantly, the young people. Imagine a young person listening to you, talking about your successes and being fascinated with that, being inspired. But then imagine you speaking about how you might have overcome a challenge, and that young person recognizing a similar challenge, similar limitation, and being encouraged to step beyond those challenges and limitations and become something wonderful. You may not be around to witness it, you may never witness it, but just the idea that it is possible, that this young person can one day be the head of state, someone who stops a genocide, someone who introduces or discovers a vaccine, or someone who creates some fascinating new architectural building. And I mention architecture tonight because our guest, Victoria Benatar, is an accomplished architect, but more about that later. So I want to thank you for joining in, for listening in. And one of the things I want to leave with you before I take a break is don't quit. Don't quit. You have an idea, pursue it. Be committed to it. Be passionate about it. Pursue it. There are times, I am certain, I'm one, people who have something that is innovative, that is different, want to quit. Because sometimes, the benefits or the effect of what you're doing or the end result hides itself from you. And this is where faith comes in. That courage, that determination to make that next step. And what I also want to say is that when we are making these next steps, when we are committed or have committed ourselves to something that is new, that is different, think about this. It is not about the me. It's about what this thing will do for the majority of us, for humanity. Think about this medium in which we are engaging each other tonight. Would not have been possible if someone had quit. Your iPad and so many technology that we are using here in this era, in the past 15 years or 20 years or 30 years, if that person had quit, imagine what our world would have been like. So, again, thank you. I'll take a quick break and I will introduce you on my return to Victoria Benatar. We are back. Those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm Selwyn Collins, your host of CWS Conversations with Selwyn. The lovely lady next to me is Victoria Benatar. Victoria, good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Selwyn. How are you?
I am fine, thank you. And before I start, I want to say happy birthday to you, Victoria.
Thank you so much. I have my privilege to be sharing my birthday here with you. Thank you for having me.
You're quite
Lovely introduction.
you're quite welcome, and thanks for that. It is indeed an honor that you will choose today or share your birthday with us today. I want to take a moment to introduce you to our audience via your bio, just to give them a few snippets of it. Um, Venezuelan born Victoria Benatar is more than an architect. She is in the business of making people happy, and our firm has been doing just that through the design of small and large scale commercial and residential projects she has built over the past 30 years. Her belief that a harmonious, balanced space leads to personal harmony and balance informs every aspect of her designs. By maximizing the use of space, adding value to a property, and especially by creating peaceful, beautiful environments, her designs improve productivity and health, encourage the personal growth of those who work and live in them, and ultimately reinforce their well being. Victoria's clients include Steve Madden's flagship store and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Annex, both in New York City. She also has many other corporate, commercial, and residential throughout North and South America. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, Art Forum, Archis, Oculus, New York Spaces, VSMD, Ocean Drive, and dozens of other publications. Her accomplishments have been acknowledged with awards from competitions and architecture associations in New York, Osaka, Istanbul, and Caracas, and she has been invited to speak at architecture conferences in the United States, Mexico, and Israel. From 1995 to 97, Victoria was a member of the adjunct faculty at Columbia University School of Architecture, Planning and Preservation, where she helped to develop the guidelines for producing and archiving digital work and taught tutorials for both graduate students and other faculty members about those guidelines. She also launched the Urban Design Department's first website. She has been the faculty of Parsons, the New School for Design, since 1996, where she teaches courses in constructed environments and architectural representation with digital media. And she's an architecture expert for the Street Easy blog, Own Your Home. Victoria earned a degree in architecture from Universidad Central de Venezuela in 1983 and a master's degree in urban design and architecture from Columbia University in 1995. Her memberships and affiliations include the American Institute of Architects, AIA, the United States Green Business Council, USGBC, the Minority and Women-Owned Business Enterprises of New York City and New York State, MWBENYS NYC, the Colegio de Arquitectos de Venezuela, CAV, and the Colegio de Ingenieros de Venezuela, CAV. She's also a U.S. Green Business Council Leadership in Energy and Environment Design, USGBC Lead, Green Associate. I want to read this last part because I think I would be remiss if I don't mention her as being on the advisory board Aid for AIDS International, AFI, a nonprofit organization committed to improving the quality of life of people living with HIV or AIDS in developing countries and in immigrant communities in the United States. Her charitable work also includes Fundana, a Caracas-based nonprofit that aids children who are victims of neglect and abuse. For Victoria, I enjoyed reading that actually.
Selwyn. Seems a little long.
I hope you're having a wonderful day.
I have, yes.
Okay.
This is the cherry on the pie of my day.
Wonderful. You live in Manhattan, but you're a native of Caracas, Venezuela.
Yes,
What can you tell us about how or about what it was like growing up in Caracas?
Well, growing up in Venezuela was great. Both my parents are immigrants. My mom came from Russia. They are war survivors. She and her parents, and my father came from Morocco. They immigrated to Venezuela for different reasons. and I was the firstborn Venezuelan, and being raised there was fantastic because I grew up with this mixture of cultures. I was really not aware. I had the South American environment that I grew up, but I also have the Russian influence and especially the Moroccan influence from my family, which is very big there. And the Jewish, I'm Jewish, so I have also the influence of being Jewish in a non-Jewish country. So it was a wonderful experience. I enjoy very much the weather, the nature, all the fantastic natural features that my country have, like because all year long is the same weather. You have opportunities to do things that you don't do here. For example, something that it's funny, like since I moved to New York, the pass of time is more evident because you have seasons, and the seasons make more evident the pass of time. It's another winter. Okay, it's again winter. When you live in a country where the weather is all the same, I guess times is pass slower. I don't know. It's different.
I never looked at it that way. And you spoke so much about Venezuela, but I want to ask you this in this way. When you hear the word Venezuela, what comes to mind?
Well, when I hear the word Venezuela, it comes to mind the nature, the sky. The sky is beautiful there. I always play this game with myself. I go up the mountain. We used to go, we have like these trails. Instead of going to Central Park and walk around, we go up to the mountain and come down as an exercise. So I used to go up there, and one of my games was to find different greens and different blues. And every day I was able to find a different green and a different blue. So this is something also that South America or being grown in Venezuela have given me, this capacity of distinguish from a very slightly, for people it would be the same color, but it's not. And I have this ability of making my mom gets always impressed at me. I can, go to shop for a pillow of a color, and I'm sure that's the color. It's like, how do you know? It might not be exactly, because I have this fine-tuning between one color and the other. I guess this is because of this game I play with myself of finding blues. And
you embrace the concept of being proud of who you are and from where you are and where you're from. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I think this is something that comes with age. I have developed this theory that you are born with the age of your soul. And then you become a teenager. Some people are born old and some people are born young. That some people, when they're young, they're old. And some people, they're always young. And I was impressed about that. And I never understood. Now I understand. You are born with the age of your soul. And then your body grows. Now, when you become a teenager, you want to be the same. This is the age of confusion. And in that confusion, you want to be, sometimes you don't want to be who you are. You want to be like everybody else. But then you need to go back to who you are. Because where the truth lies is where the best things can come out of you.
Yes.
Like and I have discovered this also with my students. I have a case, I try to empower my students doing exactly that, trying to help them find who they are. It's like finding your identity. I teach them representation, how to draw and how to represent. It's like for a writer to teach writing style, I teach them representation style, how to draw as an architect. And you find your style. Not all the architects draw the same. You can see a construction plan, they may look the same, but they're not exactly the same. And when you do your sketching and your presentation plans, they're not the same. So you need to develop your identity. And if your identity is not clear, you cannot express what you think. So it's very important to to help them develop their identity. And then you can teach them anything. They can do anything.
Can you give us a glimpse into the 9-year-old Victoria? What was she like? And who did she become at 30? And who do you believe she is evolving into or she's becoming?
Well, I was a very hyperactive girl. And I really didn't really have much sense of what I wanted. I was somehow a little leader. Somehow, I don't know, I wanted people to do what I say somehow. And, I was a little leader and a little hyperactive, and kind of creative. My girlfriends play, I invented games and my girlfriends play with me, but I think that because they were, creative games. I invented these things that, were always like challenging. So but I really didn't have a sense of what I wanted to be. When I was like, I don't know, 12 or so, I did an assignment in the art class, and the teacher asked us to do a logo. And I did a logo, and we have to fill it up with colors. But I'm very practical at the same time. So I said, you know what, I don't have that much time to fill it up, so I'm going to just fill up half. And if I have time, I fill up the rest. If not, I leave it the half. So I didn't have time, I just filled half. And the next day, the teacher was like complimenting the way I just filled the half. That was so creative to fill the half. I'm like, okay. So then I thought, all right, maybe I have some, I don't know, some talent. I was really not aware. So how do you compare the 9-year-old to what's now? That's a good question, Selwyn. I have to ask that question to myself. I mean, it's the same essence. I'm very curious. I was being curious, super curious. I actually got in a lot of trouble in my life for being so curious. I never accepted what I've been told as the truth. I was challenged, and why? And why? And why? And why is that? Actually, I was expelled out of class because the teacher was saying, okay, 2 + 2 is 4. And I'm like, why is that? And she didn't understand my question, but it was a legitimate question. Who said that and why? I mean, why is that? And it was a legitimate question, but she was not able to respond, and she expelled me from class. So you just go out, Benatar, out. You're disrupting the class. And it was a legitimate question. I wanted to know why 2 + 2 is 4, and who said that, and why this is something that we all do and agree and believe, and where math come from. That was my question.
Do you believe that curiosity informs how you approach architecture?
Oh, sure, definitely. I'm very curious in every level. I mean, I started doing the computer thing. My daughter's brother, he was doing this homework when he was 12. My daughter was just born. I was 25, 24. And he brought this homework, and I asked him, what typewriter do you use to do this? He said, no, I use computer. I'm like, what do you mean computer? I thought computers were rooms. I said, no, my computer. I have a computer. So he showed me his computer. And then after he left to school, I went to his room and tried to see what this computer is about. I'm curious. I mean, the things I am interested in, I'm like super curious. And I want to go to the end and know him. Now, still now, I take care of all my computers. I understand them. I know how to hook them up with the printers. I mean, I do my own IT. Well, I don't do it that great. But, I understand it.
Out of curiosity, I want to go back to the question before that. I know I injected that question about how does curiosity inform your architecture or. But I want to go back. I'm curious about that question about who you believe you are today and is evolving into.
Well, going back to the curiosity, in order to be a good architect and a good educator, which, I mean, I guess it's kind of in the same area, because I try to, I try to focus my work in the area of empowerment. So I try to empower my students and I try to empower my clients. And it both goes through curiosity. I try to find out who they are by asking them a lot of questions, by trying to read between their words, by trying to see what is in their mind. I try to pick up their brains. But sometimes, it's not that I'm a shrink or anything, so the people don't tell me these things that they might tell a shrink. But I need to read behind the words and read to see from what's not that obvious. So I ask them to do homework. For example, my students, every class, the first class, I go through a introductory period. I ask them who they are, and it's funny what they say, where they come from, and why they choose to study what they're studying. And they get these funny answers. And then by the answers, you know where they're coming from. The other day, a student says, because I want to change the world. I'm like, okay. Right, all right. It's a good intent. I don't know if it's going to succeed that way, but it's a good,
What are some cultural differences that stood out when you first arrived? Just a few.
Well, cultural differences. Okay, cultural differences. Well, the biggest cultural difference is that we South Americans are all emotional. We are emotional about a glass of water. We are emotional about opening the door. We are emotional about everything. I see you, oh my God. In America, it's different. Emotion is more contained,
Mm-hmm.
You don't mix emotion and you don't show emotion. It's different, the relationship with emotion. Also, the relationship with comfort also is different. I don't know if it's comfort, it's with efficiency. Here, this culture is a culture of efficiency. So whatever is not efficient, it doesn't, for example, being so emotional is not efficient. And I think that's why they are not, as the Anglo-Saxon culture is not emotional, because it's really not efficient. You spend like half an hour going crazy for something that's really an emotion that, an emotion sometimes is just a fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
So that's not really so efficient. For example, you see the fast food and all this, it comes from the efficiency of eating fast, not having the time to go, in Venezuela, you go out for lunch and you go home to eat lunch. Recently they have this, that you don't go for lunch. But normally you go, you have a lunch break, and then you go home, eat your lunch. You even have a time for a little 20-minute nap, and then you go to work again, So you rested in the afternoon, so you can work. It's a different,
Yes.
It's a different pace. When I first came here, it was like all these, no siesta. I was used to the siesta.
Did you miss that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not anymore, because I have been 20 years here.
Right.
I do it sometimes on the weekend. It's a 20-minute. It's just a little nap. It's.
If you may spend, take a few moments to tell us about your background and what led you to design, and what road did you take to get to where you are?
Well, it's funny. When I was in high school, as I told you, I didn't know what. I was very dispersed in my mind. I always had like a lot of energy, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. My grandmother always told me. My grandmother was an obstetrician. She was in Russia. She studied, and she was the only grandmother of all my friends who had a profession and who was divorced. So I have the odd grandmother. She didn't cook. So I have like the odd grandmother. And she always was telling me, you have to have a career, you have to have a career. But I really never know. I wanted to be a biologist because of this curiosity of mine. I thought that biology was answering to my questions. So then I went to do the test in the school. They did the test of, the vocational test. And surprisingly, it says that I have a lot of artistic talent and a lot of social concern. And I remember the story of the artistic teacher that she told me I have this talent, which I really, sometimes you have, this artistic talent. I thought I had a little bit, but she said, okay, you have a lot of artistic talent and you have social concern. And I swear, I put it together like 2 + 2 = 4. Artistic talent, social concern equals architecture. That's how I put it in my mind. So I went to study architecture. And at the beginning, I have a hard time because I didn't really understand what they were talking about, I saw my classmates, they were, the first assignments, they were doing it, what they were expect from them. And to me, I didn't understand nothing. I was like, oh my God, what is this? And my teacher, I had a teacher, because I was so hyperactive, I was always going to the coffee shop and and talking to people. And my teacher was telling me, you, Benatar, what are you doing here? You should go to law school. Because I was always advocating for the weakest. We have a lot of work, and I was advocating. This is too much work, and blah, blah, blah. So he said, oh, why don't you go to law school next door? The law school was next door. So go to next door. What are you doing here, Benatar? And that pissed me off. There I got pissed or upset. Maybe I should not use that word, right?
That's all right.
Politically correct. I'm not that politically correct. That's something that here is. So, I went upset and I'm like, okay, what is this? Okay, I don't understand. So that's when I become a warrior. See, you told me the other day who I was, and I told you I was a survivor. It's not survivor. I am a warrior. Because I had a pretty good life, but I'm a warrior. Because, you can have a pretty good life, but if you cannot sustain it, you can lose it. So, I said, So I overcome that, and then I started becoming a very good student. This happened to me also in high school. In high school happened the same to me, exactly the same. So I got the challenge, and I said, okay, And I become a very, very good student, and I graduated the top of my class. My first semester teacher went to my thesis. I graduated my thesis, the last grade with a mention of honor. And my first semester teacher, which I was not doing that well first semester, she came to my thesis presentation. She waited at the end, and she came to me and said, you know what? I was waiting 5 years for this moment. And I said, what do you mean? Because I knew that you deserve this, but you didn't get it back then, but I was waiting for this because I knew you could do it. I'm like, okay, thank you. She saw it.
She motivated you.
So, so maybe because I had a hard time when I was a student, I want to help my students because it's not easy. Sometimes you go to college, and then depending on your background, some kids with a more educated background or have easier time to understand, but some other kids that they don't have that background, it's like you're talking Chinese to them. You would use these fancy words, and I try to explain them the things how they are, using analogies related to the everyday life. For example, now we are analyzing some buildings. And I tell them that this is like going to a mystery movie. That you see a dead person, somebody died, and then, it's a crime movie. So you have to find who is the assassin. So maybe, you are investigating, and all of a sudden you think, oh, all the clues take you to Selwyn. You think Selwyn is the assassin. But all of a sudden, closer to the end of the movie, you realize that this is all misleading because Victoria is the assassin, and she misled everything to confuse everything. So this is like how you conduct an investigation about a building. So, like that, you make them exciting. It's not just boring, finding facts about a building. It's exciting, and they can compare it to something exciting.
How has the architecture design the design scene evolved in New York over the past several years or decade?
Well, we were in the 80s. In the 80s, everything was exacerbated, design exacerbation. In the 90s, it became a little more minimalist, and now everything is kind of more conservative because it's less resources, you know, depending on the money. I mean, design is very much connected to money.
To money.
So people were willing to spend lots of money before. Now it's more conservative. So this is something I also, try to work with my clients. What do they really need? Something I like to do with them because, and one of the things that I try to make them happy, my clients, you were saying before that I'm in the business of architecture, but I'm also in the business of making people happy. This is really the business I am on. I try to make them happy not just because I create environments to them that they, as I was explaining the other day, I have fixed families, fixing their space. If you have two kids that are in the same room and they fight all the time, it means that they are not, the space is not divided correctly. So the boundaries are not separated. So they step on each other's toes. So if you separate that, things work well. Even with couples, even with, whole families. I mean, you need to organize the space. So if your space is balanced, you are balanced. If your space is organized, you are organized. If you have a place for everything, then, you can be more efficient because you know where things are. You don't have to go crazy looking for all over the place. You know that this glass is here because this is the place for this glass. Period. It cannot be somewhere else. So, you try to create this harmony. And I think that now, going back to your question, design, it's more about that, trying to provide the client with a certain kind of lifestyle that provide them with harmony, with peace, more center, more.
Let me just go to the chat room for a second.
Sure.
Karen G, you said, happy birthday, Victoria. Pablo Vic said, wonderful woman. Patrick said, Victoria, you're just a troublemaker, LOL. Patrick, LOL. Patrick, what is the major differences between South American and North American architectural styles?
Well, it's very different. Like, here, I mean, we build in South America, we build kind of, you could say, we build with the stucco and concrete and, because there is no specialized labor. So you build with mud and bricks. Here you build with specialized labor, with wood and with shingles and sheetrock. It's much different. I mean, it's brick buildings down there. Here are like wood. It's funny though, and here is metal buildings. It's funny though because buildings here are fragile.
Talking about that, tell us about the role of women in design in New York, both in the past and today. Are there special challenges that come along with being a woman in the industry? Yes. What has been your experience? Are things evolving? And what do you see as the future where things are going? Well,
this is a male-dominated. I mean, it sounds like a commonplace and like, the feminist is going to talk again, la, la, la. I mean, it's a male-dominated world. And I might not tell you more because maybe rate it. I mean, it's tough. I mean, but it doesn't matter. One day, Christiana Manpour, she was talking about being an Iranian woman in the press, and she said something that I like. That it's fun because men are gentlemen, and when men are gentlemen, they open the door for her, and then when they open the door for her, she step her foot in, and then she see what she does with her when the foot is in. She she manages. Even if it's a male-dominated world. So I take that sentence of her to me. When the door is open, I put my feet in, and then I go and see what I do with that. I try to take the best out of it and try not to complain too much because then, we put ourselves in a week. I mean, You know, discrimination and it's when you put it to yourself. Someone wrote, you know, you did the ad for the show with the sentence of Eleanor Roosevelt. This is the one I like a lot, is the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. And somebody sent me a note about another sentence of Eleanor Roosevelt who said something like that nobody can oppress you if you don't allow them to do so. So I refuse to feel discriminated. I refuse to feel less than.
In the chat room, Jonathan asked, do you find the need to be tough on your students when they don't seem to be making an effort?
Oh, for sure, of course. I mean, this is an opportunity. You know, when you're young, you think you're going to be young forever. Now I'm in an age, now that's my birthday. I always tell them, I'm closer to death than to birth. Because, you know, if I would be closer, I mean, I would be 100 and something. So I'm closer to death. And they are closer to birth. When you're closer to birth, you think that your life is, you know, it's going to continue like that. I mean, when you are 2 years old, you're double than when you were 1. You know, when you are 50, I mean, 5 years, it's 10%, I mean, 10% of, I mean, so when you get older, time compressed and you don't have time to lose. And when you're young, you feel that you have all this time to lose and then don't realize, number one, the opportunity they're having of someone that's interested in teaching them. Number two, the opportunity they're having of having the resources to pay for the school. And number three, the time they're investing in this moment that's going to go. You know, time is the only resource that you cannot get back.
Who, outside your parents, who would you say has had the greatest influence on you?
Outside my parents, who had the great influence on me? Well, different people. I like, for example, Albert Einstein. I mean, I like amazing minds. I am always fascinated by these minds. It's like you say, the minds that refuse to give up.
Yes.
You know? These people are a big inspiration to me. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be somebody known and super famous. You know, just, I mean, sometimes you watch on TV these people that they have problems and they go to the handicap Olympics, or that, you know, they overcome their own difficulties. I mean, these inspire me. I mean,
you're successful. What do you remember about landing your first major job in New York?
Well, you know, these things happen without you realizing. I had this, it was funny. I have this person call me on the phone and he said, "Are you Victoria Benatar?" And I said, "Yes." "Did you design a shoe store?" Blah, blah. And I'm like, "No." And he said, "Yes, you did." I'm like, "No, are you Victoria Benatar?" And I said, "Yes." "So you did this shoe store?" I'm like, So he tells me, "Listen, I'm in the Four Seasons and I would like to have a meeting with you. I have a job for you. It's a small job with a future." And I like the approach. And I was a little embarrassed that I don't remember what he was talking about. So I said, "Okay, you can come by in 20 minutes. So in those 20 minutes, I was like rewinding my brain. You know, my memory is a memory now. So I'm like, bzzz. So this was a project I did when I was working. I was working with Alison Spear. And when I was working with her, we did this shoe store that it was kind of interesting because it has this sticker block, and instead of sticker block, it has shoes. But it was never built. So I didn't even remember. So he saw it and he called me. I'm like, okay. So all of a sudden, he came, and this was the Steve Madden. He came for the Steve Madden shoe stores. So the small project with the future was, you know, can you do this wall for the Steve Madden store? So from there, I did like 5 prototype stores.
So would you say this is what opened a lot of other doors for you? This particular job? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, just being there open doors for you. If you're there, if you exist, open doors for you.
You have been mentioned or acknowledged with awards from competitions and architecture associations in New York, Osaka, Istanbul, and Caracas. What does this mean? And can you give us some context? What does it mean to you to be acknowledged that way?
I mean, it's good. It means that what you do. It's you have maybe somebody's interested in what you're doing. When you work, you are immersed in yourself. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you ask, "Wow, does it matter?" For example, in the Steve Madden stores, I was around that time. I was asking myself that question: does design really matter? And after I did the stores for them, in Black Friday they were measured the amount of money they sold. They sold more than double after the stores were redesigned.
Oh, wow.
So I figured, oh, wow, design matters. So then I started asking this question about my private clients. And I realized that, it's not a matter of like, this, snobbish, let's have my house beautiful. It's not about that. That's when I start realizing that I'm in the business of happiness. And that's when I start realizing that it's, I work for them and I try to give them, the projects I do for my clients, it's not for me, it's for them. That's why all the projects are different. You can see my projects and they're all different.
Well, talking about happiness, and I'm glad you brought that up. And I'm going to ask you this before we take a quick break. What are you present to when you think of your own happiness and other people's happiness?
What do you mean?
When you think of your happiness, what comes to mind? What are your thoughts when you think, oh gosh, I'm happy? Where are you? What are you thinking about when you think about your own happiness? And then, as an architect, as you said, you love making people happy by your architecture designs. What do you think about in that process of thinking about other people's happiness?
Well, I'm happy when, I can achieve the goals of my clients. Mm-hmm. When I'm happy inside myself, when I feel peace. Peace is a big part of my happiness. That I feel peace, that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm in the right place. Now, I'm happy regarding my work when I can provide my clients with what they want. I like to, for example, my business, they have to invest sometimes a lot of money. And I don't want it to be an expense. I want it to be an investment. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And people see you as an artist, quote to quote, but I consider myself I always say it's not Victoria Benatar. It's an investment with good taste. Because, I try to make it an investment with the taste that leads to happiness. One part of the happiness is that this is going to be a capital improvement. So when you are selling your place, or when it's going to get the value that you invested, it's going to increase. So, that's another way of making people happy, that you're not putting the money in a, just in an expense bucket. Mm-hmm. It's an investment. So you put in this money and they reproduce. It will represent a capital improvement. So that's another part of the happiness I try to achieve. It's not only physical, spiritual, it's also economic. Now, I don't want to sound like a bank, but I try to do that as well. Because I do it for me, I do it for me. So it makes me happy. And I know it makes people happy as well.
Let's take a quick break.
Sure.
I want you to think about this. When we get back, I want you to answer this question. Can you describe for us one of your most gratifying projects? We are back with the lovely Victoria Benatar. Victoria, the question before the break is, can you describe for us one of your most gratifying projects?
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you that I cannot describe one. I think that my most gratifying project is the body of work that I have done. You know, because I cannot just not mention one. For example, I can tell you, the first time I saw something built, that it was like exactly like the plans. You know, you work in the plans in a little scale and then you see it. It was like, oh my God, wow. And, you know, throughout the time, I mean, I have becoming better and better in what I do. And, you know, I'm not saying it with modesty. It's just because, you know, after 30 years doing the same thing, if you don't become good, it's like you have a problem. I'm not, you know, not that not modesty or anything. It's just I've been doing it long enough, so I know what I'm doing now. So I mean, I think that's the answer.
Jonathan in the chat room asked, "Are you tough on students who aren't putting in enough of an effort on a project?"
Yes, I am tough. Yes.
And why do you teach, and what is gratifying about teaching?
Well, you know what? I learned so much from them. I tell them, you are not aware that I am learning more from you than you learn from me. For example, you know, something that the students ask me, you know, we give them a syllabus with all the assignments and all the deadlines and da. And they ask me, when is the deadline? Oh, la, la, la. I'm like, okay. You're not going to ask me questions that you can respond by looking at a piece of paper that I gave you. You know? And they look at me like, and you know, I'm not going to condone this kind of lacking of, you know, ask questions that are questions, you know, that we can have a discussion of some interest, not like a question that you can look at your syllabus and find the answer. So yes, I'm tough. I'm tough with them. And I think it's, you know, it's good to be tough.
If you have experienced prejudice here, in what form would you say it manifested itself to you?
Prejudice against me? Mm-hmm. Bueno, as I told you before, I don't acknowledge it, so therefore it doesn't affect me. Mm-hmm. The other day, somebody asked me that question. I was like, me? Discrimination? Why? I mean, I noticed, like, for example, when I first came, I went to Colombia and I did my master in urban design, and I went to the pharmacy. I'm not going to mention the pharmacy, not to advertise them. I went to buy a map. Mm-hmm. And I said, where are the maps? And I asked, and then they sent me to the mops. So then I asked another person, can you please tell me where the maps? I was like upset. This is like, do I have an accent here or what? Do you understand what I'm talking about? You know, in my head. So then I asked another person, then again they sent me to the mops. I'm like, okay. So then, you know, after 20 years, I've been putting it together and say, okay, because I have a Latin accent and I'm a woman, they sent me to the cleaning aisle. I don't get it. But, you know, I say it like funny. I mean, it's their problem. You know? Because I came here to do a master at Columbia University, which is one of the best schools. I mean, so therefore, it's their problem.
You have managed to grow a business while raising a child here, and you've also been featured in many magazines and so on. What does this mean to you? First, as a woman, I don't know if this is a fair question, but I want to ask it for our audience. As a woman, and then as an immigrant woman, what does this mean to you?
Well, you know, raising a kid is not easy. I was telling my daughter the other day, I wish the kids come like with a manual, so you would know exactly what to do with them, you know, but they don't. So it's not easy. Kids, you know, with working mothers, they're nice, mm-hmm. You know. They know where they can, they know how far they can get. Because if your mother is working, there's, you know, you cannot go too far. Mm-hmm. So they are nice, and they help the situation. It's hard, but you know, how can I tell you? It's like, you know, I would put it this way: when the baby is born, she was 4 kilos and 750 grams or something like that. So you carry it like this with one hand. Then in 2 months she's heavier, and then 4 months she's heavier, and then 1 year she's heavier, and then 2 years she's heavier, but you still can pick her up. Mm-hmm. If she's not your child, you cannot pick her up because she's heavy. Because I have been picking her up little by little, little by little. So I have been building strength, So that's why it's the same with everything. Mm-hmm. You building your own strength. So you are capable of doing as much as you build up your own strength. There's some people that have 5 kids and they work I just have 1 daughter. But there's some other women that have 5 kids and they work and they're professional. How they do it.
I want to shift gears a little bit and, explore this other facet of you. You are on the advisory board of Aid for AIDS International, AFI, a non-profit organization committed to improving the quality of life of people living with HIV or AIDS in developing countries and in immigrant communities in the United States. Your charitable work also includes Fundana, a Caracas-based nonprofit that aids children who are victims of neglect and abuse. What led you to become such an integral part of AFI? And with all the various charities, what is it about Fundana that appealed to you?
Well, this is the same question that when I was in this test that they did in school for me, mm-hmm. that I always felt compelled about design and about social causes. So I always felt compelled about social causes. I was always a little girl, I never understood why there were kids walking, when I was waiting for the school bus in front of my house. There were these kids walking barefoot, and they were not going to school, obviously, and I didn't understand why these kids not going to school. Why they don't have shoes? To me, this was like, what? Why? So I always feel a little compelled, mm-hmm. and I feel that, if you're lucky and you can do it, you have to help. This is part of giving back,
That's true.
So
do you have any female heroes?
Female heroes. Wow, female heroes. Yes, I do. Mm. Who's my female hero? I don't remember. I don't recall now who's my female hero.
Could come back.
Yeah,
we could come back.
Back.
Do you have any advice for women or young girls who, I should say young girls and women entrepreneurs and architects who want to launch their own practice?
Sure. I have a female hero. This girl, the Cuban girl who's a blogger, Joanny Sanchez. She's a Cuban girl that she risked her life. She had a blog in Cuba. She was traveling. She's amazing. She's a girl. She's risking her life just to put the word out of what's happening in Cuba. It's amazing. Leonor Roosevelt is one of the
Eleanor.
Mm-hmm. She's amazing also too. For the entrepreneur girls, well, there is this book, Lean In. Mm-hmm. I forgot her name. This is an amazing book for girls to read. She was one of the executives of Facebook and of Google, and she it's a book about empowering.
Sandberg or something.
Yeah,
Sheryl Sandberg. Yeah, I think that's who she is. Yeah.
This is a really good book for empowering women. What can I tell you? You have to do what you have to do. Whether you're a woman, whether you're a man, whether you're a kid, whether you're handicapped, whether you are black or white or Latino. You have to do what you have to do.
Talking about that, before you that gentleman called you to build a wall for Steve Madden's store, how did you find clients in the early days in New York?
Well, I started working. The contractors gave me work. You know, I did a small project for a friend, and then I met the contractor, and he called me for another project, and through the word of mouth. And that's how I've been working since, through my reliability,
Give us a glimpse in a day of the life of Victoria Benatar, as two people, as an immigrant female architect at work, and just as a woman, the observer in New York City.
Well, depending on the age. As a woman, depending on the age. Because, when I was younger, I required less production than now. I'm being honest. When I was younger here, when I moved here, I used to I used to go out more and, have fun, going out, partying, the typical things younger women like to do. At the same time, I was working, I work hard and play hard, let's say, back in the day. Now, this moment, in my womanly life, I go to the gym. I enjoy going to the gym. I like to go to watch movies. I see my friends. I go have dinner. I visit them in their house. Sometimes I cook. I stay home and watch movies or read. I have a very peaceful, tranquil life, Sometimes I travel. I like to travel. I see friends. Sometimes we meet and we enjoy. And as an architect, a day in my life, it's regular day. I wake up, I have breakfast. I go down because my office is on the second floor. I live on the 17th floor and I work on the second floor. So that's since a year and a half ago, or 2 years, I established that situation, which is pretty great. So I have everything under control. I go down, I work, then I have Whole's food next door. So I go buy food, bring it, eat it, work, then go to the gym, come back, have dinner. It's
wonderful life.
Yeah, and the days I go to school, I do the same, except that I go down and take the subway, go to 14th Street, and come back. The subway is close by. I have like 2 blocks from the subway. So, yeah. And other days, I go visit the jobs, like twice a week. I visit jobs. I also belong to a networking group where I met our mutual friend Karen, and this is Wednesday at 7 in the morning. So I do that every Wednesday morning. And I teach twice a week in the morning as well. And I try to keep Fridays for me to stay by myself in the office. It's time where I think or I produce the designs or things I have to do by myself. And,
you're mentioning Karen. I mean, thanks to Karen, we are having this conversation here tonight.
Lovely Karen.
Yes. In the chat room, Patrick asked, how do you use architecture to create a social outcome? Or put another way, can you design residential communities, for example, in a way that can reduce social conflict or produce more cooperation?
Yeah, I think so, of course. I mean, to do that, we as architects, we don't work by ourselves. We need to work with the community, To reduce social conflict, first we need to know what the conflicts are. And then try to find a balance and, a place where the social conflict can either disappear or live in harmony. There is always going to be a conflict, I see the way, like, for example, brothers or sisters, there's sometimes like a little jealousy between brothers and sisters, but if you have to live with that. That's something that exists. Or people that get angry. You get angry, I get angry, people that exist. But if you keep, without provocation, an environment that everybody can feel they can, how is it, time off on their own, it's not aggressively, you're not top of each other. I think communities can be built beautifully without any conflict. Why not?
And
sure.
And Dawn said, enjoying this interview. Happy birthday, Victoria.
Thank you, Dawn. Maybe you can do a cake for me. That's Dawn, the cake, Dawn.
I don't know. A little. What kind of architecture trends are you noticing these days that appeal to you?
Well, now there is a lot of technology involved in architecture. Now, the career is changing a lot. And thanks to Mr. Frank Gehry, he introduced this software called, this computer technologies called CATIA. And with that, the systems of construction have changed. Now with the one software, it's called BIM, it's Building Information Modeling. You can input all the information about a building into one model, and you can produce the drawings, you can produce even the construction plates to build. It's amazing.
BIM.
So, yeah.
BIM. You know, early on you mentioned how when you were much younger, as a child perhaps, you would go into the hills or the mountains or some different places in Venezuela and look for things that are green and blue. And I'm curious about this question, since you're an architect. How do color, textures, and space influence how you come up with a particular design?
This is a good question. It's the most important. Colors and textures this is part, because, you know, I'm not just an architect, I'm also an interior designer. So the colors and the textures also inform the space and create, you know, it helps, for example, with the noise or with the sound and with the warmth and with the look and feel of a space. I mean, colors and textures are a super plus in what you are creating. It's not the same thing that if you use a polished surface than if you used a wooden surface or a stone surface or a, you know, like a more rustic surface. I mean, it defines the different look and feel. It's incredible. This is like a whole palette of choice. You know, this is what's good about United States, that you have everything to choose from here. You know, in Venezuela, it's limited, the amount of selections that you can have. Here, you can have anything you want in the whole planet Earth to design with. It's incredible. And the new technologies are allowing for new materials. It's great. I mean, it's very exciting.
How do you deal with conflicts of concepts between you and a client?
I don't really have a conflict of concepts with my clients. In general, I don't, because I listen very well to where they're coming from. So I try to give them what they want. I mean, unless, people is not crazy, so they don't want like silly things that, you know, my whole point, and this is also something, this is a good question, because this is also something I do with my students. Design is not a random thing that you're going to say, this is beautiful because I said so. It's not. You need to prove it, that what you're saying is true. And there are ways of proving that's true. For example, now I'm doing the hallways of a building, and they call me because the hallways of the building were ugly. They know they're ugly, that's why they call me. And I cannot say, okay, yes, they are ugly and we're going to do this, that's more beautiful. But the word beautiful, it's relative to the eye of the beholder, correct?
Yes.
So, what's beautiful for me, maybe it's ugly for you. So what I do is I say, okay, I assess the problem. In that sense, I'm very practical. I assess the problem. So I created a board and say, okay, this is ugly because of this. There's not enough light. There is all these things happening that look disorganized. the color is too homogeneous, so it doesn't look good. And I say, why it's not looking good? Point 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I go, point 1, how are we going to fix the light? Like this. How are we going to fix this? This looks so messy. Like this. How are we going to fix the color thing? So I give them 1, 2, 3 options for color. And within these 3 options, I gave them also 3 sub-options of paint, like wallpaper, carpet, and paint. So it's not that I'm saying this is beautiful and I am God and you shut up and nobody talk. So I give them up, I give them the problem, I give them the solution, and I give them options so they would choose. So the conflict of concept. Maybe they can say, well, I don't think this is gonna work, and my job is to prove them that it works. So for example, I have to hire a lighting designer. I say, okay, I had a theory in that particular project that if I lower the crown molding was attached to the ceiling. So my theory was, if I lower the crown molding and I use this side of the wall, the ceiling, and this side of the wall painted in white, that would project more light. To lower the crown molding, increase the light in 2%. And I can prove this. I hired a lighting designer, paid out of my pocket, who used a software that they have to prove that this increased 2%. Whatever light we put, that increased 2%, the light, without doing much stuff. So, you can prove it. It's not my word against your word. It's not like that random. I don't like the randomness because that's what makes people insecure. And I don't want to make people insecure. I want to make people feel empowered. I want people, they know they choose this and they're investing their money and they know the reason why. You see?
What do you think about designing if you had the resources and time in your hand?
What do I think about designing?
No, what would you design, or what would you want to design? Let me frame it that way. If you had the resources and time.
What I would like to design? Well, I want to design a city. I would like to design that city that he was asking me about with no conflict, this city.
That Patrick asked you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Maybe I don't design the whole city because it might be boring, but can create the layout, the organization, and I would invite other architects to participate, and it would be like a group work, a teamwork of creating this.
Here's a question for you, and I think of patience and intuition and all these things. How much does experience, intuition, and patience help you not only understand what the client is requesting, but to close the gap between what they're describing and what they really want?
It's a whole, well, you know what? It's like I was telling you, I'm becoming like a witch. And this is not becoming a witch. It's like I have my intuition. It's very. I have developed. I think it's because of that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I have developed intuition, and I can read behind the words. This happened to me. Like before, people is saying, I say it. Mm-hmm. And and people feel somehow that we connect.
Mm-hmm.
So when people connect to each other, it's easier to communicate. So I think that experience and age, and what was the other?
How does it help to? Well, it's experience, intuition, and patience. Patience.
Patience.
Yes.
Well, yeah, patience.
Yeah.
I have a lot of patience. Yeah, I have patience. Before I didn't have patience, but now I have patience.
What are some of your?
It's with age you realize that you need to get patient.
I agree with that. What are some of your predictions for architecture in 2014 in the next couple of years?
Well, predictions on architecture, I don't know. There are amazing projects happening in the city.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big project happening in the west side. It's called the Hudson Yards, which is going to change the whole west side. It's a beautiful project, and if you ask me, I would like to participate in a project like that.
Let's put it out there then.
Yeah, I would love that. Because it's going to change. You know, this is the beauty of New York. That's what I love this city. The city reinvented itself, and here there are also amazing minds that always find a way to invent something amazing. Like, for example, now they are doing new projects for the Madison Square Garden.
Really?
Yeah. The lease is expiring soon.
So they're going to transform the whole thing? Oh, that's interesting.
So, I mean, they are like always amazing minds here that, you know, create this city. That's the city that never sleeps.
What is one thing about you, Victoria, that most people do not know and will surprise them?
And I'm shy.
Oh, well, I'm even more honored that you came here tonight. What is gratifying about being Victoria Benatar?
Well, you know, I mean, that I have learned and I keep learning and I like to learn, and I mean, I'm always have this curiosity, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
At certain point, I thought that I stopped, that I didn't have a capacity of getting impressed, you know, and this is not good. But then somehow, somehow, give it back to me, and I'm like, okay, I still have it. That's good. So, you know, this capacity of being impressed. I saw this exhibition of Tyrell in the Guggenheim. It was like, oh my God. I mean, some things that like, wow.
You know, I want to ask you this before we take a quick break, because you mentioned connection and how and intuition and connecting with people, intuition, and you know, this whole spiritual aspect to you. If I may ask, is there a set of religious or spiritual compass or principles that you use to guide you through each day? And I mean, if they are, if you can share a few with us.
Well, you know what, I'm Jewish, which, and I like a lot of the principles of the Kabbalah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not very. I mean, I read a lot. I'm not like. I mean, I'm not like fanatic of anything. I like to read a lot. I like some things about Buddhism. I like some things about. I mean, whatever like can enlighten me. I like Mr. Deepak Chopra.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I believe in reincarnation. That's one thing I believe. That gives me peace of mind. That if I don't have a time to do it in this life, I will definitely do it in the next. I believe that, the Kabbalistic rabbi explained the creation of the world in a way that was beautiful. He said, and I don't know if he said it exactly like that or I interpreted it. I don't want to, because, you read things and then he said that originally the world everything was black, was dark. And the light was the first thing that was created. But in order to light to exist, it needed a container to reflect the light on. So the container was receiving light and receiving light and receiving light. But nothing can receive and receive and receive and receive without give. So the container got full, and the container exploded. And then this explosion was the Big Bang, in which a little piece of light is every one of us. So I thought that this was a beautiful image of God and of the idea of God being inside of each one of us. God being the light. that is inside of us. I mean, if the religious people hear me, they're going to say that I'm like a, how you say this, a prophanic, maybe. But I don't know, this idea makes me feel enlightened, and I like it.
Good point to take a break.
Thank
Good
you.
point. Thank you for sharing that.
Said, suffer the little children to come unto me. Every day, more than 30,000 children around the world die of preventable diseases. More than 300,000 children are being used in war as child soldiers. Lord have mercy. A child should be loved. A child should be held. A child should be clean. A child shouldn't smell. A child shouldn't go to bed.
We are back with the lovely Victoria. Victoria, in the chat room, Karen G said lots of new projects in the Bronx too. And Karen G also said, I enjoy listening so much that I can't even ask a question, just learning from Victoria. Victoria, looking back, what will you change, if anything, about your education, about your experience? What would you change?
Nothing.
Wonderful. What kind of music calms you down?
What kind of music?
Music, yes.
What do you mean? That
Music.
I like?
What type of music you like? Yes.
Oh, you know what? I like Latin music. I like Latin music a lot. I go to Zumba classes twice a week. And I like to listen to the music and I like to dance to the music.
Do you sing?
Yeah, I sing sometimes,
yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
When are you
Like
most
sing.
happy?
What am I most happy?
Yeah.
I am happy when I'm dancing. I like
When you're dancing?
Yeah, I like dancing a lot.
And what is the fondest memory of your parents as a child?
I love to go with my mom to the supermarket.
Oh.
That was a fun memory.
And your father, what stories he always tells about you?
Well, my father is always telling me how happy he was. He just told me this morning. The happiest day of his life was when I was born.
That is so
He was so
beautiful.
cute, yeah. My father's
And what a day to
sweet.
be asked such a question, right? On your
He's
birthday.
very sweet.
I'm glad I asked you that question.
Yeah. He's
What are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of like having, I am proud of what I have done, I'm proud
Yes.
of my career. I'm proud of being a mom. I'm proud of being a warrior. And
A
not
warrior.
giving up.
I like that word. I love that
Yeah,
word.
I am proud of not giving up. Sometimes, you want to give up, but it's just, I have too much energy. God don't want me to give up.
If I asked you, well, I'm going to ask you the silly question, to give a shout out to anyone or someone's, who would you give shout out to right now?
What is a shout out?
Oh, important. Well, to say hello to, somebody that might be listening that you want to say hi to.
Well, no, I'm going to say hi to everybody that's listening. I don't want to leave anybody out. If
Well,
you guys are listening, I'm going to say hi to all of you. Thank you for listening and sharing my birthday with me.
I understand why you were so successful. Very, 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 very astute. Finish the sentence for us. I look forward to Sunday evenings to.
What?
Finish the sentence for us.
I look forward Sunday evening
To do what? To what?
to be in bed in my pajamas early, resting, tranquila. It's funny you ask that because, when my daughter was little, at 6 o'clock, it's pajama time and we're all in bed, no matter what. Because Sundays you're running with the kid all over the place. So at 6 o'clock you're exhausted. So still now I'm like, she's 28 years old, but on Sundays I look forward to go to bed early. I watch TV or read a book but in my pajamas.
Anything you're working on now you can share with us, or you care to share?
Yes, I'm doing this hallway project, which it's very exciting. For the moment, it's going well, and I'm telling you, when I present the options to the board of the building, they were very impressed, and they told me how impressed they were. They said, "Wow, this is very professional," because as I said, I approach the work in a very objective way, Not it's me, I'm God here to decide, and what I say it's the same word. I'm doing a couple of projects that I'm always, any project for me is a challenge, even if it's small. I have this client, she's from Florida, and she told me the other thing, something very sweet. She said, "I'm so happy that I met you. I met her through friend of a friend of a friend of a friend. And she was not sure if she wanted to do it with architect and ta-ta-ta. And, now I eliminate every headache from her. So, I'm in charge. And she told me, "Oh, I'm so happy that I met you." It was nice.
I have a question I'm very curious about, and I'm asking you this because you're a teacher and been in the industry for so many years. How does architecture influence the way we communicate with each other?
Well, that's a question. Well, I guess, in an open space, you communicate more than if a space is all segmented and, you're locked in little rooms. If you have like a community space. For example, in New York, it's interesting because New York is the epitome of the urban space. An urban space is where most people live together following a set of rules where nobody bothers anybody. You follow the rules, but you don't bother anybody. But in a way, and we all live in little rooms, in our apartments. But then we go to the street, and we somehow, even if we don't talk, we communicate, Going to the subway, or when we're walking with the iPods or with the iPads. I think, yes, space influences the way we communicate, definitely. I need to think more about that. That's a good subject for a PhD, even,
If you could go back in time, what would you tell that 15-year-old girl?
Me?
Yes, you, Victoria.
I would tell her not to be afraid of anything. That everything is going to be all right.
Be a warrior.
No, I would say everything is going to be all right. Sometimes I have been afraid. And, sometimes fear delay. I'm not going to say stopped, but delay things, that you could have done sooner. So I would tell her that. Do not be afraid.
Before I ask my last question, I'm going to slip this one in. Has fear ever come between you and a particular project?
Well, yeah. When I was younger, when I told you I was in school at the beginning, I saw the fear of the empty paper. This is the writer's block. Is the same. And then I realized that this fear was exactly the thing, the creative seed, So I revert the whole thing.
I like that. I like that. Well, fear is the creative. I love that.
Yeah.
And my last question, which I ask all my guests, what makes you laugh out loud?
Well, no, that makes me laugh out loud. That makes me laugh. That question.
Oh.
You're funny.
Did you have a good time?
Yeah, excellent. Thank you so much, Selwyn.
You're
I'm
welcome.
very happy that I choose to spend my birthday with you.
Oh gosh, I
And
am
your
honored.
audience, thank you so much.
I am so honored. And before I go, let me read a few remarks in the chat room. Karen G said, "Smart woman." Patrick said, "She got it." Yes. And Victoria, thank you.
Thank you, you guys. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the evening and rest of the week. Thank you.
And now you're an official woman of CWS, so I'm going to ask you to come back sometime and share some things with us.
I'll be with you in the chat as well.
All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Mama,